Okay. Supposedly we're live.
We are.
Let's see. It's still using the wrong title. Oh boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. All right.
I'm pretty sure people can see us now.
Oh, I'm quite sure. That's okay though. They're gonna. Yeah. Oh, now I can hear myself. Okay. Let me
Gotta mute
send.
yourself.
Okay, perfect. I'm just gonna send this link in the Discord now.
Okay.
Cool. And cool. Okay, so Patrick, welcome. Bayside, welcome. Everyone, welcome. What do we want to do? I want to run through the numbers. I want to run through the numbers first, just so that we're all aware of what just happened. And then I'd like your reaction, and we can go from there. Does that sound good to you,
Sure
Bayside?
does. Go for it.
Okay, so HIMS just reported revenue of $545 million. The Wall Street consensus estimate was 552 million. So it was a miss versus Wall Street. It was right in line with company guidance. Company guidance was 530 million to 550 million, 540 at the midpoint. So they did beat by 5 million there. But to my knowledge, it's the first time that HIMS has missed revenue versus Wall Street estimates in company history. I need to go back and and look at that. David Maris, of course, said never miss on revenue, never miss on earnings. And I don't know if he was talking about versus company guidance or versus Wall Street estimates, because you really only have control over your own guidance, and they did not miss that. However, we're used to beats of close to 5%. This was not that.
Mhm.
The official HIMS House prediction, of course, was 555 million. So I was close, but off by 1.8% or so. So not within the 1% standard
Ah,
that I'd set for myself.
falling down on the job.
But 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 and I will endeavor to do better next quarter. But but I nailed the subscriber number. I said 2.44. It was 2.44
Wow.
plus 73,000 net new subscribers, which was the first time since Q2 2023 that HIMS reported less than 100,000 net new subscribers in a single quarter. I'll just run through and we'll get we will certainly get into that, but I'll just run through the other numbers here. EPS 17 cents versus 16 cents. Adjusted EBITDA a nice beat there of 82 million versus 72 million. Gross margins of 76%, which uh, was 3 percentage points better than Q1 when it came in at 73%. As I said, subscribers 2.44. The guidance, HIMS released guidance for Q3 of 570 to 590 million. So at the midpoint, 580. I think the prevailing estimate on Wall Street had been 586. So it's a little below Q3 guidance, at least as Wall Street expected. I want to say I'm still expecting 600 million plus as I released recently, and this is for subscribers, but happy to give it away to those on the live stream. I see I'm looking at like 612, 613 million for Q3 right now. And then full year guidance reaffirmed, reiterated across the board, 2.35 billion in revenue full year, 315 million in adjusted EBITDA. So those are the numbers. I have a few thoughts regarding how I'm feeling, which is mixed at best, but I want to turn it over to you. I want to turn it over to you, Bayside. What stood out from the report?
Uh, well, I think one of the things that stood out is they actually gave us numbers on GLP-1s, which allowed us to back out the core, excluding GLP-1s. And as I had been expressing some concerns, some people refer to that as the core sort of loosely. That I've had a lot of concerns that there's been slowdown in the core, and that those numbers confirm that that in fact is true. The entire drop quarter over quarter in revenue, almost 100% of it, can be seen in the drop quarter over quarter in GLP ones. But what that means is that everything other than GLP ones was essentially flat from quarter over quarter, and that's what we're seeing in a lot of the things. If you had to look really closely at the data points that we've seen, some folks like Bank of America have been saying this for some time, and HIMS seems to have confirmed that. So that's a negative thing. There are a lot of positives, which we'll get into a little later. But I think if there's any one thing that stuck out, it's that. But before I give it back to you, I do think
Did you
it's
say the numbers? I'm happy to go through the numbers if you didn't say them.
yeah. I don't know if I just did, but so I'll let you go ahead. But before I give it back to you to run the numbers, I do think the long-term bullish thesis, which is the other half of what I've been saying inside the hymns Discord, is still bullish. It's still bullish, and there's plenty of stuff that we got that feeds into that to me, that we'll get into a little later. So while I just said something that's fairly bearish, the bullish thesis is still alive and well as far as I'm concerned.
Wonderful. And yeah, I'd like to check in because you've been more neutral slash cautious,
Yes, I have.
and have been on record as such. I'd say over the last month. So
Mhm.
would like to check in at some point. But on the GLP-1 versus core, I tweeted this. The the Q1 revenue was 586 million.
Mhm.
230 million came from GLP-1s, leaving um, oh boy, the math. Leaving 230 million came from GLP-1s, leaving 356 million to the core. In
Mhm.
Q2, we had 545 million. 190 million came from the core, leaving 355 million to the core. Meaning, as you said, Bayside, we dropped 1 million from 356 million in Q1 to 355 million in Q2. The core is flat. The
Yeah.
core is not only flat, the core declined sequentially. The core
Mhm.
was up year over year, and maybe that's worth saying. But
Mhm.
you've been looking at the sequential numbers as much as anyone. You've been pounding the table. That is the thing. That is the thing to look at as we try to understand the health of the business.
Mhm.
And it didn't grow 5%. It didn't grow 10%. It actually fell. Uh, core 315 million revenue was Q2 2024. I checked and it was 15 million from GLP-1. So if you go back to Q2 2024, it was 300 million. Now we're at ah, oh shoot.
I forgot the number you said, but it's I mean,
Now
there's a
we're at
little growth,
now
but
we're at
it's not huge.
355. So there was some growth year over year, but again, quarter over quarter down.
Right.
Um, let's move to the stuff that you're more constructive on or bullish on.
Well, there's more on the negative side too, but we can come back to that if we have any interest. The positive stuff remains what I've said. For me, you can get tied up, and I have gotten tied up in the present. And there is short-term risk around slowing growth in the core, and then all the legal issues surrounding GLP-1s, which I think are worth revisiting since I've written stuff about that in the past. But the long term continues to be new categories and international expansion. I don't know enough yet, and I know we've got some guests coming on the pod to dig into some of the new categories we're looking at, and I think those will be great podcasts. But I will say, I think I'm more bullish than perhaps most on the international expansion, and the reason why. Let me start by saying the negative thing that people are saying, and then why I disagree with it. A lot of people are saying this international expansion thing is a nothing burger. because in most of these countries, they've got public health systems and a lot of idiosyncratic regulatory requirements, which will make it very, very difficult for HIMSS to replicate the model as it's existed in the U.S. But one of the things that people don't are not paying enough attention to is that while there are public health systems in most of these countries, almost none of those health systems cover the kinds of treatments that HIMSS is providing. Hair loss, no. Um, Weight loss, for the most part, no. They're considered cosmetic. They're not considered core health pieces. I mean, you're going to find a few exceptions here and there. And in the private health insurance market, just like in the United States, if you've got good health insurance, it can cover those things. If you don't, then it won't. So while there are these negatives out there, and if you looked at the growth that Zava has achieved and others have achieved, it shows that there is growth potential in those countries. One of the interesting things I heard is almost a throwaway line was a reference to Brazil. I'm like, what? I hadn't heard that yet. So
Well, semaglutide is off patent there too in
yeah,
2026.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that was an interesting reference. Um, But there are some other negatives. I want to turn it back to you, but I do think there are some other negatives we need to consider in the short term. But I guess if I were to have a headline in terms of my reference, this is a transition quarter. Is a transition quarter from the immediate past and present, where there are some concerns, to a future that continues to be bright.
So on Zava, and
Yeah.
I think we should say this, they paid 200, what was it, 265 million
Did we
for
get a
Zava.
number? I didn't catch it.
Yeah, we got the number. There was some discussion in the pay to win channel in the Him's House Discord. So thanks all for flagging that. 265.7 million. Now, it will add something like 50 million in revenue through the end of 2025.
Yeah.
Um
There's a negative
why
there
is
too.
that significant to you? It seems like a throwaway number to me.
Well, it is a throwaway number because it takes time, right? You're not going to grow a company that is only got a certain amount of revenue in no time. You need to grow it, right? I mean, that there's work to be done, and that contributes to say the bearish thesis. So I've just got through saying I continue to be bullish about the future, but we are in a transition quarter, and we may be having a few more transition quarters in front of us. I mean, first of all, ironically, the fact that 50 million is kind of small in some ways is bullish for this reason. They didn't adjust their yearly guidance, and yet now 50 million is in there that didn't used to be in there. That's new, and
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
that could be seen as another negative. How come if you're adding 50 million from Europe and Zava, you haven't added 50 to the overall guidance for the year? And they didn't. But the answer is that it takes time for these things to ramp up, and we're not going to see meaningful increases on the new categories or international until we get into 2026. So really, we're looking at a few tough quarters. We're looking at this one being a tough quarter, and the next two are I don't know if they'll be negative like we just had. They're going to be positive, I assume, but and I imagine they'll hit it with GLP-1s for the most part. But still, we're in a transition phase. It could be 1 to 3 quarters, but I think we got to be looking into 2026 before we see a lot of those really bullish things come online in a meaningful way.
So in addition to Brazil, and he said, uh, I think he said Brazil specifically. He also mentioned Latin America.
Yeah,
He said Asia. Some are
yeah,
speculating maybe Korea, maybe Japan. He didn't say any more than Asia. But what he did say is that the international expansion will not be spray and pray. I think
mm,
that's a direct quote.
it is.
They're going to be specific and directed at a handful of key markets.
Mhm.
And I saw some people in the Discord who weren't thrilled that they're looking at Latin America and Asia,
Why
and
not?
I think the prices are lower. It could be a distraction from the U.S. I mean, that was one of the things that I asked in.
Mhm.
So the Him's House question was around international expansion,
Right.
and part of the question is, why isn't this going to be a distraction from the U.S. core business? And I don't know that that was really answered, but
I have an
I,
answer for it.
I think it's among the concerns that investors have.
Well, I have. I mean, I'll just give my answer. I don't work for the company, obviously. Um, the reason, in my opinion, and this is strictly opinion, is the reason why they haven't done this up until now. Sure, they had a presence in Britain, but it wasn't meaningful. Was because, as has noted, the big money was to be made in the United States. Clearly, so why, if you've got X amount of money, you're spending over 50% of your marketing of your revenue on marketing as it is, you're going to want to go where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, right? Obviously, and that was the U.S. I think this is a strong indicator that the bang for the buck being primarily in America is obviously not holding anymore. And the flat growth in the core is a sign of that. Another sign of that, one of the things that was a point of worry for me was the fact that revenue as a percent or marketing as a percentage of revenue has been declining. It was over 50%, and that made for all of those people in the early days of hymns who
Yeah.
complained about that, it was just stupid. They weren't spending that much money on revenue for any reason other than it was a great way to spend money because every dollar spent on marketing contributed to their future bottom line. It made total sense. I loved it when they were spending over 50% of their revenue on marketing. They're not doing that. In the most recent quarter, they're down to 40%. In the last quarter, it was 39. The excuse was around the ED meds, and it's still presumably an issue. But I'd say 2 quarters in a row of in the 39 to 40% range, marketing range, says that they're not getting the same bang for the buck that they used to. That's why it's come down, and it's not. But they probably are getting the same bang for the buck, but incrementally, if they were to go above 40%, they would not be hitting their yearly targets for lifetime value of a new subscriber. But that could change when we get new categories online and when we go into Europe potentially.
One of the additions to the call this time was CTO, new CTO, Mo El Shinawi.
Should have come on him's house first.
We would love to have Mo on the pod, and we're going to work to do exactly that. We'll see what happens. What did you think of what he said? He only answered the rehearsed statement or the
Yeah.
prepared statement. He did not jump in when any of those Wall Street analysts asked questions.
Hmm.
I think he listed off four items or four objectives that they were trying to achieve. But
Hmm.
I well, before I say what I thought, um,
I actually want to hear what you think.
before I before I say what I thought, anything about what he said that stood out?
It didn't blow me away. I mean, but it's not like they're going to spill the beans. They have to do these things incrementally. They're going to go after the low hanging fruit. So I would not have, if he came in and said something monumental, I would have been stunned. But as expected, it wasn't anything amazing to me. What did you think?
Well, on a call where 80% of what was said was vague, I thought that may have been the vaguest section or vaguest part of all. Like, I just didn't get anything from it. I said on the earnings preview that I sent this morning that I would really like to hear about what HIMS is doing in AI beyond leveraging machine learning to increase personalization or to drive
Mhm.
personalization. And that's really all we heard. They're using AI to, continue to build towards personalization. And that's fine. I just don't know what that means exactly.
Mhm.
Um, I can come up with some ideas, but I want concrete examples. I want
Yeah.
specifics. I want more than hearing about some unified data platform. Like the number of buzzwords that were thrown out during that AI section, it was just a little bit too high for me as a former software engineer. I didn't get anything from it,
Well,
and
I didn't either.
and yeah, unfortunately, it sounds like you didn't either.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say about AI that he did not say is I do think it has an important role to play once it's coupled with the home testing and when especially in some of the new categories. When you combine home testing and some of the new categories they're going to bring online, I suspect it's going to play a very large role.
One thing Andrew said about that at home testing is that
Hmm.
initially they're going to roll it out to support the launch of the hormone therapies,
Makes
but
sense.
eventually it will help create what did he say? Amazon Prime like or Costco like
Yeah.
memberships.
Yes.
Uh, that was interesting, and I thought exciting to hear.
Yeah, he said something like that on a different interview earlier this year, where he basically said about at-home testing that he wanted to build it into the membership. I believe that was the exact words he used, and have it as close to cost-free as possible, so that they would be offering it as essentially to all hims and hers customers. That's quite a bit more ambitious than what they're doing now, but you would expect them. You want them to phase it in step by step.
So I think it's worth saying the stock is off 13%. We've
It was
just
high.
cracked.
Everybody
We've
knew it was high. Come
we've
on.
just fallen below $55 a share.
A week or two ago, 55 was awesome.
That's right. A week or two ago, we were at $48. We rocketed 40% on no news. Uh, Calmer minds were realizing that we might have been stretched.
Yes.
Turns out we were. I mean, overall, how would you rate this earnings report?
It was
Basically,
a nothing burger to me.
0 to 10. What sort of score would you give it?
Compared to other earnings, it's at the low end for other earnings for hims and hers specifically, because they usually, earnings is like we're blowing out. We're up, 10% quarter over quarter and or 15% or some number like that. And then, we're still on 70% year over year, all that kind of stuff. I mean, those days are for now behind us. Um, but I do think it's a transition. This to me, it's the big thesis. I would love it given enough time to kind of at least check the things that I want people to be aware of in the short term. Um, but the hard part is it's hard to put numbers with the long term thesis so far because you need to have a pretty good understanding of what international growth can look like. And then you need to know more about these new categories. I mean, we have had, at least in my mind, others might yell at me for this. I feel like the mental health category has been a dud. I have not seen any indication that it's been, growing spectacularly. And what that means is that it's possible for him to roll out a dud, and we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, look no further than the number of advertisements that hims and hers have for mental health on Facebook,
Mhm.
whereas the other categories have hundreds. And overall, I think both are in the 300s, maybe north of 350. Mental health has fewer than 20. It is it is not performing. It is not being prioritized, and it is a dud. Uh,
Yeah,
is that your computer or mine?
it's me. Let me see if I can silence that. So I have a couple
Okay.
of things I want to say on the legal side whenever you're ready for that.
Yeah. So just on the quarter, I would probably give it like a 3 or 4. Now,
What's
I'm
the
not
what's a five? Is a five an average hims and hers?
average, correct.
So
Now,
for hims, because hims has had better than average,
for
right?
hims, and this is a company that we're invested in, meaning that we have a
Yeah.
high opinion of it.
So
And I,
I would say 2 actually, lower than you by that
I'll
standard.
I'll
That's a
remain
high
inve-
standard, though.
okay. I'll
That's
I'll
a high
remain
standard.
invested in the company. This is not financial advice. I suppose I
Right.
should say that.
No
But
financial
but
advice.
but the revenue situation is unfortunate, but I don't really care that we missed versus analysts by 7
Mhm.
million. Uh, you look back in 3 years and that won't matter much. The core
True.
business being dead, like flat to down to dead, is a concern.
Sure.
And as I think back to Q1 when they announced that the sexual health vertical was undergoing transition or
Mm.
rotation, whatever, whatever.
A lot of jokes there.
Sorry, whatever the term Yemi and Andrew are using.
Yes.
I thought that was going to be a 1 maybe 2 quarter rotation.
Me too.
And and the way they talked about it during the earnings call this time suggested to me that they are potentially in the early innings still of that rotation. It is going to be multiple quarters until it starts to bear fruit. And in the meantime, it will be a drag on the whole business because unfortunately, sexual health is the bread and butter for hims. Like
Yeah.
weight loss is 30 to 40%, but sexual health may be just as large or nearly as large. And, you know, it sounds like they're confident it will it is the transition that the company needs to make. Sounds like they're confident that retention will increase across the board as a result of what they're doing. But it's going to take, it sounds like 6 to 9 months until we start to see positive benefits from that.
Yeah. Although I think they actually kind of said that they will. They expect to get that back on track. I have to go back and look at the wording.
So yeah, so that's unfortunate to me. I am excited that Hims wants to be viewed as an AI company. If they
Mhm.
pull that off, I think I think you probably see a multiple revision upwards. If the market starts to take seriously that Hims is something other than a D2C telehealth company, right?
Mhm.
The shares will receive a different sort of multiple. I think bringing the new CTO on helps with that, but it only helps with that if if they outline specific, exciting, concrete examples of what's happening behind the scenes, and that didn't
Yeah.
happen. So I was a little I was very excited when Mo was on the call, slightly disappointed about what we heard, but maybe it's just not the sort of venue where they're going to disclose all sorts of specifics. Maybe I'm too optimistic there.
Yeah.
um Final thing, not a single question or comment about the collapse of the Novo deal.
Yeah.
uh
Well,
Maybe
yeah.
the by the way, from analysts that, downgraded the company in the aftermath, that said legal risk is back on the table, litigation risk is back on the table, no follow-ups about that.
Yeah.
um who knows why? Maybe, you know
Old news, I guess, to
40
them.
45 days have passed and the litigation risk is a little lower. I'd say it is lower than it was 45 days ago. Although the Novo comments, I think, have made some people wonder about that. We'll see what
Mhm.
happens in the coming days. I was actually a little worried that Novo would drop the lawsuit this morning. I think
It
this
could still happen soon,
it could. I think this morning was a day that they could have done it just to,
just to
uh,
be spiteful.
yeah, just to mess with Andrew, to mess with investors. Yeah, I mean, based on the press release and the words of the press release and the tones and all of that, it would not have shocked me if they if they dropped something like that the morning of, of earnings. Fortunately, they didn't.
Mhm.
Um, Final thing, they said we're entering this period of investment. Did you hear that?
Yeah, sure.
What does that mean? What are they focusing on? I sort of missed the details there,
Building
but
the tech stack and all the other things they're doing for future growth.
okay, so that's around
That
AI.
tells us expenses are gonna be higher.
It's right. It sounds like expenses may go up. I don't know whether there will be any return to revenue in the near future based on the investments. It sounded like it was a longer term bet. And so we'll
Mhm.
just have to wait and see on that.
Yeah. Um, I would love to just throw in these last pieces just so people know where I'm coming from, if that's
Please.
okay. All right, so shifting, taking off the bullish hat, which I still am, for the record. Uh, the final things I think people just need to keep an eye on. You mentioned the Novo deal, or the possibility of a Novo lawsuit. So I've written a lot on that. Obviously, the chances for that are not zero; they never have been. But otherwise, a lot of it is the same. The same. The risk is still the same. I do think the fact that they've got a new CEO now who starts on August 7th, so Thursday, that I would imagine as soon as that new CEO is on board is when the risk starts to rise a bit again. You look like you're about to say something.
No, I learned that he hasn't started yet. Go on.
Okay, yeah, he starts on Thursday,
Right.
August 7th. So that would be a reason not to pull the trigger just yet until your CEO is on board and has had a little time to be briefed and give everything the okay. But I think we know that CEO, given the tenor of the language in that press release, we kind of know where the leadership was, and probably this. What are you going to do about the situation was part of the interview process for that CEO. They needed a plan. So the plan is either going to be, we have to sue just because we're getting our lunch is getting eaten, or they've got some kind of plan to work with the administration to do something. Now we've had all these discussions on the internet in recent days about what most favored nation might be. Is the administration going to be pro compounder, or are they going to go after compounders? Who knows? I think probably most likely if NOAA does something, they actually are going to sue. We'll see if they actually do it, but I do think that the risk is at least a little heightened as of the end of this week over the next few weeks. The other thing that I think people need to know, since what I really wrote about back in March on the legal side, a major piece of that was everything that HIMSS is doing is above board and legal under federal law, which it is. Not that has not changed. But what is out there lingering is there at least two things that are of concern that the FDA could do. One is they could implement the so-called too difficult to compound list, which has been around. They did some preliminary regs on that last year. All they need to do is drop the final regs, and then there's a different way that FDA it can stop compounding, mass compounding, but just taking GLPs off. And now, if you do that, then you can't do any compounding of GLP-1s, and that's a lever that they have that they could use that they haven't used. Another one that they could do, if you went looking at what I wrote back in March, was I talked about inordinate mass compounding, the inordinate word. And one of the ways current law is intended to stop that is this limit on interstate shipments of compounding. And it's 5%. It's supposed to be how much you can send interstate from a compounding facility, except that there's this MOU that they've been developing for 7, 8 years, maybe longer. Um, that it Congress in the law says you got to do one or the other of these things. So it's up to the FDA to decide if they just want to flat out impose this 5% limit, which would completely gut interstate shipments of compounded GLP-1s. If they did that, it's a lever that they can pull that so far they have not. So those are danger areas. Now, do I know that the FDA is going to do either one of those things? I do not. But it's just something to keep in mind, which is if you put the legal risk on the table combined with the flattening revenue in the short term, all of that leans in a bearish direction. But what keeps the bullish argument alive is all of this forward stuff that we're talking about. So if you believe in the future of hymns, then the future of hymns is still strong, and this will be a buying opportunity. But that has to be central to what you think about the stock, in my view.
Great, thanks for that. I just posted in the chat. If you have any questions, drop them below.
I can't see him, so I'm going to let you
So they're
read them.
rolling in. So Patrick, if you go onto the right panel of Riverside, there's a chat bubble, and you can see what people are posting.
All
We've got
right,
so we have 230 people watching, which is actually kind of nice.
all right.
Um,
I still can't see it, but I'll
not
let you
the
read. I'll let you read
Okay, so
things.
I'm gonna go through them, and uh, let's just do it one by one. Some guy with an off-color name referencing a couple people in the Discord says, "What AI does Hims have?" Uh, Interesting question. I would answer they have what they call MedMatch. They've not
Yeah.
revealed too many details, unfortunately, about that. But I imagine Mo is going to be building out
Mostly what it is
those
a way to
capabilities.
reduce, get greater accuracy with the prescription
Prescribing,
writing.
right?
Yeah, and so you got better accuracy. It's basically a recommendation engine for the physicians. Also allows the physicians to go faster, so they're more efficient.
Yeah.
But
One of
more
my
efficient and better quality
one of
recommendations.
one of my favorite YouTube viewers. He's not in the Discord, but we've corresponded over email,
Yeah.
and he always leaves the most thoughtful replies to our interviews. Chimed in. He says, "Hey
Oh,
guys, my
good.
question. This is Sagi G72.
Okay.
Um, uh, Damn, it keeps scrolling automatically. Are you planning to bring Andrew for another interview soon, perhaps with the CTO? Yes, we are hoping to do so. Any update on 503B? I imagine they're asking about the rumors and speculation that's been swirling. All I
Mhm,
can say is what I've been saying, which is that the 503Bs appear to be ramping up.
mhm.
That continues to be the rumor on Reddit and with industry insiders. Well, with some industry insight, most
Some.
industry insiders. Dave Knapp confirmed as much the other day, and we're just gonna have to wait to see if there's uh, what's the expression? Smoke. There's certainly a gunshot, or if there's If there's
There's
a
smoke but
gunshot,
no fire
if
yet.
there's a gunshot to the smoke. That's right. Okay. What else? How big of a deal will the hormone treatments be? How profitable?
That's a big question.
I think it remains a big question. I think, possibly very big. But as you said, like Hims has rolled out a dud before, so they're gonna have to nail it when they roll it out.
I think one of the things to say about a lot of these things, uh, I know a lot of people talk about the total addressable market, the TAM, being big, which is true for virtually everything that HIMS does. I don't actually think the TAM's all that important. I mean, it's somewhat, but not super important. The reason why is because the TAM is irrelevant if you cannot cost effectively reach customers who will pay for what you're selling. So a lot of the customer acquisition cost stuff is the real limitation, not the TAM. And this is one of the reasons why they roll out these new categories so slowly is they have to do a whole bunch of testing
Yeah.
to kind of figure things out before they actually commit to a category.
A guy named Sam said, "How much do you guys expect other categories to accelerate to offset declines in the core business? How does the $1 billion cash position Hims to unlock value?" Interesting.
Well, the 1 billion presumably is what they were talking about it with these investments which they mentioned on the call, right?
Yeah. Jarrett's asked something. Jarrett's
I
basically.
do. He's
Isn't
good.
the 5% limit set at the state level? This is related to what you were talking about
Yeah, yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I will defer for a moment because I need to go back and read the law. Uh, that may in fact be true, but it's a pretty tough limit, which is not applicable at the moment.
I like this question. If you completely cut out GLP-1s, would you still say Hims is a good investment
Would
on a
I say it?
on a 5 to 10 year time frame?
Yeah. But I also think it would be cheaper, which would make it even more of an investment. A good investment.
It would be massively cheaper. I mean, I'll say if GLP-1s go to zero, I think Hims sees the teens.
Could be.
Uh, do let me vet these. Sorry, I can't. It's hard to read and talk. Do we have any estimation at all as to whether meno and testosterone will return Hims to supernormal growth? It's sort of a wait and see.
Yeah, we just don't know yet. A lot of people seem to think it's a good category, so it's not just hymns.
This is worth not a question, but I'd say worth showing on the stream. Was expecting Nighthawk to make an appearance. Got to see this dude's face. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, he would have been great, especially if you think I'm too bearish on this one. He would have been awesome. By the way, I should say, although Nighthawks makes me laugh, he's so positive. It's so positive energy. I love it. Uh, it is not impossible that he could be right. The right things could still fall into place, and I'm looking forward to that party if it happens.
Oh well, the party will happen eventually. I think you would say $100 is when, not if, right?
Yeah, yeah. But just the
Not
question is
knocking
exactly
on wood
how
here.
long? How
Again,
much
like
time are we
if
talking about?
GLP-1s go to zero, um, on Thursday when the Novo guy steps in, or anything bad, really, if anything really really bad happens.
But even think about it. Even let's
But
imagine GLP ones did go to zero. That worst case scenario. They have so many other things that they're looking at. I mean, GLP ones. If you look over that 5 year plan that they've got, I don't know how much GLP ones is slated to be. What percentage of that revenue from here to 2030 is supposed to be GLP ones? But I would imagine it will be smaller than all the other things they're bringing on.
yeah, all right, we're gonna wrap soon. But final questions here. What do you guys think about the stock price this week based on the sentiment of the quarter due to slow growth quarter over quarter?
Are we allowed to comment on those things? No
Well,
financial
just
advice.
stock price end of week. What do you think?
Oh my gosh, that's not my strength. Um, I think it's going to get hammered.
I would jump in and disagree. I mean, you've traded the stock as well as anyone,
I
so
have.
predicting the price is a
I
stretch.
had almost perfect record up until this most recent run up, which I did not. I did not expect it to go over 70 yet again. Um, I think it's going to get hammered. Usually, in my experience, and this is where my opinion is not more important than anybody else's. But ask me about federal laws, and I'll feel comfortable on this one. My guess, which is worth as any much as anybody else's opinion, I think it's going down this week. Probably it hits bottom around 50 and then starts rebounding a little bit. I don't know precisely when that will happen. The really big one is still out there. It's those legal things I was talking. If an FDA thing hits, if Novo sues, we're probably back down to 40.
I think if Novo sues, we're beneath 40, but we'll see.
It could be.
Uh, Someone says, Jonathan, you banned me in the Discord the other day. Now I'm getting on the vids, heart emoji. You know me as the prune. The prune is in the Discord. Haven't banned him, and feel free to reach out via DMs if I did anything I shouldn't have to you. Although you were bugging me one day, but you didn't. You, I haven't banned you. Oh, interesting comment. I felt Andrew was much less dominant today on the call. The CFO answered almost all the questions.
Mhm.
CFO being Yemi, of course. Did you feel similarly? If so, what are you making of it? Any thoughts on
Oh.
that? That's an interesting observation.
The only time I wasn't pleased with Andrew is when he didn't show up was he was on paternity leave. That was like a couple of years ago.
I
It
think
was
that was I
fine.
think that may have been Q2 2023, which is
Yeah,
when because we were talking about this the last time they added less than 100,000 net new subs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. By the way, this time was less than Q2 2023. If you want to go back to the last time it was lower than this most recent quarter we just got, I think you have to go back like 4 years,
Jeez.
back to 2021.
All right. Well, we may wrap it here. We were hoping to have a special guest. I'm not going to disclose who it was, but we
Because you still
will.
want that special guest in the future.
Yeah, would like to get him on a future podcast. I'm confident we can do it. Any final things? I wanted to. I don't know that that I mentioned this around the net new subs number, which was 73,000. It was so low in part because commercial dose semaglutide rolled off. So there was this large cohort of customers that
It's
churned
part of it.
immediately uh, upon the start of the quarter, and so they were working from a lower baseline. And the core slowed, the core is flat to down, and that also contributed to the low net new number. But the roll off of commercial dose semaglutide, I actually thought Yemi and Andrew uh, they talked about the degree to which that affected the revenue situation and the subscriber situation and the ARPU situation more than I expected. It seemed to really hurt the business in Q2, so I think that that's worth uh, noting
It
before.
won't necessarily just be Q2. The other dynamic, which will still be true, is that as they lean into GLP-1s, which they have been and will presumably continue to do, $100 million worth of revenue gets you a lot fewer subscriptions in the GLP-1 space than $100 million gets you if it's like ED drugs or hair loss, because the price per subscription is so much higher. So the number of subscriptions potentially drops, or at least the growth drops, because you've got these high dollar but smaller number of subscribers.
What are you saying about $100, Patrick?
I was just picking a random number. Let's go with $100 million of revenue. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're selling because I can't keep track of all the pricing differentials. So I don't remember what the most recent price point is. $200 for if you go of a year, whatever it is, a month. $200 a month. Let's just use that one.
Yeah.
Is a lot more than say $60 a month. So if you were to get a skincare product or ED or something like that, the average price point for the last few years has stayed pretty constant all those years. It was somewhere in the $55 to $60 range. And then suddenly, if you look at that's one of the graphs, if you look at it, that's been going up because of GLP-1s, because it probably over the course of a year, it's at like 3 to 4 times uh what their other products happen to be. So as you lean into for revenue purposes into GLP-1s, you'll continue to get that revenue, but you get fewer subscribers for that same amount of revenue. And
Yeah.
so that will have an effect on the number of subscribers. There'll be higher dollar subscribers, but fewer of them.
Higher dollar. Yeah. And so we'll see what happens in Q3. I mean, recently the company did move the annual price of the GLP-1s from 169 to 199.
Mhm.
We'll see if that causes any sort of bounce to ARPU.
Right.
But okay, so you were at a 2 or 3 out of 10 on this quarter,
I
Patrick.
called it 2.
If 5 is average,
Yeah, for him
okay, for
specifically.
hymns, totally.
Uh,
Yeah, we're just grading hymns
yeah,
versus.
I would give him a 2. I would give the one that we talked about in back in 2023, the Q2. That was the worst one in my experience. That
Okay.
was worse than this.
Do you think this is just about the second worst that you've seen?
I think so. But
'Cause-
this is a we're
wow,
grading. This is a high curve.
it is a high bar, but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the stock is now off 13.5%. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Yeah, we may trade back towards $50. I think if we do, and there's no Novo lawsuit, we bounce relatively quickly. It is somewhat dependent on the macro. Some people are nervous about August, but Tom Lee's not. I'm not. We'll see what happens. Not. I'm knocking on wood there. I do think the setup's good.
That's
So
a macro reference to trade or something.
just talking about the macro and the market
Got
at
it.
broad. Yeah. So anyway, thank you to the 245 viewers, probably all around the world, who are still with us. Some guy in Spain noted before we hopped on that it was midnight there and we'd better hop on because he has work tomorrow.
Because he wants to go to sleep.
I didn't. Yeah, yeah. I think I made a joke in the Discord about the work ethic in Spain, but in any case, thank you to all of those who've stuck with us. Any final words, Patrick?
Nope. Keep your chins up. It's not the end of the world at all.
Great. We'll be back with episode 41, but thanks again for joining us for the live stream.
All right.